Aloha and welcome to another edition of A Better Day. I'm Sam Slom, and for the next half hour we're going to try to inform, educate, and hopefully entertain you as well. Did you just tune in by accident, or do you watch our program regularly? I hope you're a regular viewer. If so, you know that we call this a better day because while some people talk about a new day or a new beginning or a different or whatever, we want a better day. Just like we want you to be profitable, we want you to have maximum choices and options, and we know this is possible, even in Hawaii where we've got a lot of problems and a lot of things that we talk about right now. First of all, you know, we continue to talk about our economy, locally and nationally. And we have a lot of our political people and the media keep trying to tell us, hey, we've turned the corner, things are better, everybody is doing well. But we know differently. It's not the case. We're struggling in Hawaii, just like they're struggling in many states across the country and many cities. The problem is that we have a political system which does not really embrace or believe in a true free market competitive environment. And as a result of that, you see from time to time, I'm sure, I see it regularly, rankings from other organizations across the country where they continuously rank Hawaii at the bottom of the list, number 49, number 50, in economic vitality, in business climate, and things like this. Things that want to make people invest here, want existing businesses to expand, to create more jobs and more opportunities. Well, I'm positive. I talk about a lot of problems that we have and the solutions that are there, but basically I'm a positive and optimistic person. I've lived through Hawaii after the salad days of statehood, when we were booming, when we welcomed new ideas and new people, to today, when we don't welcome new ideas and we don't welcome new people and we try to do the same old, more government, more taxation, more spending, and more debt. But we've got to change, and we've got people in our community that are going to help us change, and we have to stay the course. And that's the good news, and that's why we're going to look forward to a better day. But you know, about this economic situation. Last month, the head of the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to continue their so-called stimulus program, the QE program, quantitative easing. Now, I know that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but what it really means is that here is the Federal Reserve Bank artificially keeping up the stock market. That's why you see the stock market with so-called record or nominal highs. It's not based on productivity. It's not based on actual wealth or any improvement. It's based on a steady infusion of new money that's being printed that's not backed by anything, which ultimately is going to cause more debt, more inflation, and more problems. But even the Fed chief, it was interesting, said that they're going to continue doing that because the economy has not gotten that healthy and has not turned around. And we know that. So it doesn't mean that you have to buy into that, though. It means that there are things that you can do with your family, with your business, individually, to make a difference, make a choice. And that's what we're trying to do because Hawaii deserves it. Hawaii is a better place. Well, you know by now that we're going to have a special legislative session the end of October, starting October 28th. I call it the not-so-special session. It was rumored since the 2013 legislative session adjourned back in May. And it's taking place because of one reason, special interest. Now look, why would we have a special session devoted entirely to same-sex marriage? Is that an urgent issue? No. Is it something that can't or shouldn't be done in a regular session? No. Why now? Because those groups, organizations, and individuals have been very successful in lobbying. They have the ear and the support of the governor and the majority of legislators and also the media. But it doesn't make it right. In the last 12 years, Hawaii has had two special sessions that were not related to the Senate's responsibility of confirming and advise and consent to judges or cabinet officials. Those two examples, one had to do with the super ferry, you may remember that, and the first one was back in 2001, and that had to do with the impact and after effects of 9/11. And what was it all about? Trying to preserve our economy, trying to deal with the problems that 9/11 had created. That was the real cause for a special session. And even, you can argue, the super ferry also. But same-sex marriage, just doesn't hold water. And yet, there's a lot of emotionalism, there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of division in our community. Well, to prepare you for that special session coming up, we've got a really special guest today. So if you got other people in the house, tell them, hey, come on down, watch TV. Our special guest is Jim Hochberg, a very prominent local attorney, an advocate for the individual and for traditional marriage, and he's the president of Hawaii Family Advocates, and he's been involved in this and other related issues for quite some time. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome Jim Hochberg. Hey, Jim.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you've been a busy guy because you've been on a lot of media programs, and you are the go-to guy whenever it seems that we have the same-sex issue raising its head again, same-sex marriage. You and I have been through this from reciprocal beneficiary days to civil union days and now to same-sex marriage days. First of all, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, because I knew you when you were
That's
like
absolutely
that.
true. That's
Your dad,
absolutely true.
who had been a vice president at Hawaii Pacific University, we had worked together, and I remember little Jimmy, and now he's Big Jim and a very good attorney. But tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I moved to Hawaii in 1969 after I finished 6th grade because my dad at that time was a military officer. He got assigned here after Vietnam and then retired here. So I lived here since 7th grade with the exception of some education. And I love it because we never lived anywhere longer than a year before I got here.
Yeah.
I went to UH Law School and graduated and got licensed in 1984. And I've been practicing here since then. I've been doing religious liberty and sanctity of life and protection of the family litigation as a pro bono project since the late 80s. And currently, I represent Hawaii Family Forum in the Jackson versus Abercrombie same-sex marriage case, which is on appeal at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals because we won here with the Director of Health.
Do we have any idea when we're going to get a final version of that?
Well, actually, yesterday, the plaintiffs and the governor, who are the appellants because they lost, filed a motion with the Ninth Circuit to see if they could get an extension on their opening brief because they want to see if the special session moots the case.
Got it. Okay.
I'm also representing the bed and breakfast lady that got sued by the two lesbians because she wasn't comfortable having lesbians sleep together in her house.
Right.
And we're filing our opening brief on that one tomorrow. So yeah, I have a lot of fun. Hawaii Family Advocates is a 501c4 organization, which is a electioneering social action charity. And we helped get Beth Fukumoto elected last year. We tried some micro-targeting tools that we were given, and they worked. It was fun. So I'm looking forward to next year.
I see that Marilyn Lee wants to make a comeback next year. So
I appreciate the challenge.
And I'm also interested during political campaigns when materials come out and somebody says it's a smear. If it's the truth, it's not a smear.
That's true.
And a lot of people run away, it seems. They run away from their records and what they said and what they did and all that. So part of your objective is to try to set the record straight.
Absolutely.
Make the information available.
And what we can do is micro-target conservatives by address with this data bank that I have. And so I much more efficiently than the candidate can send many fewer mailers and save a lot of money. I spent $4,000 to Maryland's 15 in the last month of the campaign last year. So it's really fun.
Yeah, good. Well, some people have different kind of fun and recreation and all that. That's what you do. All right, look, let's talk about this issue and about this special session coming up. But again, let's take a walk down memory lane.
Sure.
When people said, if you just pass reciprocal beneficiaries, then you'll have equality and we'll have rights and all that. And we did.
Correct.
And then
we got a constitutional amendment at the same time.
We got a constitutional amendment, which I remember at the time telling people, you know, this is not what you think it says. And it's the importance about reading legal documents. Now, you know, I'm not a big fan of attorneys, but there are times when you need an attorney. And when it comes to when somebody gives you a 400-page lease and they say, oh, no, we'll take care of that, that's when you need an attorney. And when you have a constitutional amendment, particularly the way the wording is, you need somebody to explain. I remember back in, that was what, 1998, there was a lot of discussion about it, but the prevailing thought was, okay, we do this and we're going to guarantee traditional marriage between one man and one woman.
And I am hearing today from many people, why is the legislature trying to change it? We made the definition 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
That's right.
And the language in the Constitution is, the legislature shall have the power to reserve marriage to opposite sex couples, not anybody they want.
Yeah.
And so Hawaii family advocates and the people that we're working with want a message to people to call your legislator and say, we want to vote on this. Don't do this legislatively. And my argument for it is, hey, legislature, if you don't know what the unintended consequences are going to be, why take responsibility?
Right.
Let the people vote on it. If it passes...
But we don't. We don't let people vote on things here.
Well, I know.
We're the only state that does not have either statewide initiative, referendum, recall, or term limits. We don't have any of those four.
No, we don't.
And, you know, we talk about, well, we believe in the people and we believe in this and it's for the keiki. Everything's for the keiki, everything we do. But we
Except
really don't.
same-sex marriage isn't for the keiki.
Yeah, that's right.
It's rather bad for them.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know what, and to bolster the desire to let the people vote, I like to say, we changed the definition of marriage in the 70s. Before no-fault divorce, it was until death do us part, unless both people wanted to get divorced.
Gee, what an archaic idea that must have been, huh?
And the interesting thing was, the problem that across the country legislatures were addressing was how horrible it was for spouses and children to live in a house where everybody was fighting and screaming and because they couldn't get divorced. So the thought was, we'll have no-fault divorce. There's no defense to a divorce filing in Hawaii, and all the other states probably, so that people can not have to live together. They can have a happy place, better for the kids. The unintended consequences have been devastating. The dads kind of scored. They got younger girlfriends than the wife that divorced them. The daughters had pregnancy and drug problems, and the sons had crime and drug problems. And if you look today on the mainland, in the big cities where these mobs of teenagers are running through 7-Elevens and stealing everything or beating people up for no reason at all, that is the direct result of the generation that raised them failing to raise civilized children to become good citizens in the next generation. Those are the unintended consequences. And if the legislature doesn't know what changing the definition of marriage is going to have as unintended consequences, they shouldn't do it. They should let the people take the responsibility.
Yeah. Well, again, going back, we had the constitutional amendment, we got reciprocal beneficiaries, and some of the issues that were raised were legitimate issues about, you know,
If they were true.
If they were true. But, I mean, they were legitimate in the fact that there were certain laws about not giving out hospital visits, health information, things like that. And reasonable people said, okay, I can remember arguing for that. All right, let's fix those things. Let's identify the problems where people really are separated artificially and all that. Let's have laws or change the laws to do that. But that wasn't it. Give us reciprocal beneficiaries and we'll have equality.
Well, actually, though, I think the proponents of reciprocal beneficiaries was Hawaii Family Forum, the LDS Church, because we would get the constitutional amendment in exchange.
Yeah, but that was it. That's an important part.
Didn't want it because it didn't identify their sex activity as the basis, because anybody who couldn't get married.
And they didn't want the constitutional amendment.
And they didn't want the constitutional amendment.
They want the people to vote on it. And by the way, that vote was very
73%.
substantial. 73% supported it, but again, we're looking at it now and saying a lot of people voted for something because they had not really read it. The media, of course, did a very good job of obfuscating, not talking about it, and the few voices that were raised really were ignored. Okay, fast forward, we go from reciprocal beneficiaries. The ink was hardly dry on the bill, and people said we need to go further. And you and I both know that the advocates for same-sex marriage always had that as their goal and objective. It's kind of like the non-smoking situation. People said, well, if you just stop it in the restaurants, you know, so we don't get secondhand smoke
and
for
in the offices. Right?
Yeah, in the offices. We're only thinking about the employees and all that stuff. And then if you only stop it here, and if you only stop it there. And I talked to people from the very beginning, and their idea was, we're going to ban cigarettes, we're going to ban smoking. Of course, they don't do that because of the tax revenues and because of all the benefits they get. You could also make the same case for early education. That is another one of the governor's favorites. We'll just do this for 4-year-olds. We'll just subsidize. You know, we're not adding any more education. All we're doing is transferring large gobs of money from one group of people to another. Just do it for 4-year-olds. But I talked to the people that organize that. They want it. I mean, assuming that there's no abortion and a baby comes out healthy, they want that baby to be taken care of by the state right away.
Sure.
So all these things have the same thing in common. The state is involved. And that's how we move from the civil unions, which was going to be another panacea,
And I was
but
down
not
here
really.
in 2009 and 2010 saying,
Yeah.
look, if you vote for civil unions, you're voting for same-sex marriage.
Right, right.
And I was right.
And you may recall we in the Senate had the longest public hearing ever, 18 hours continuously in the auditorium. It was quite a deal. I mean, we had people bringing their kids in. They were laying on blankets on the floor. Some families took their kids home. They came back and all that. 18 hours, and at the end, the vote was 3-3 on the Senate Judiciary. And then, of course, we saw the next year an end run in the House and the legislature and all that. And as a matter of fact, I think you could characterize this issue and this process as one of doing that, not really being upfront, not being transparent, not talking to the people, and certainly not having the vote on it. It would be parliamentary or legislative maneuvers. Would you agree with that?
Well, you know, I went to, what do they call that? We Listen or something? There's some dog and pony show that leadership goes to a freshman's district. I think it's called We Listen.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went to the one out at
We Hear,
Kapalama
We
School
Listen.
recently. And you're allowed to ask questions if you write them down. So I asked, what is the process for special session? Is it like a regular session? And Speaker Suki answered the question. He said, pretty much. I mean, it's going to be has to pass 3 readings in each house. We're going to have hearings. You can bring testimony. The only difference is there won't be any amendments.
Yeah.
And which makes me kind of wonder, well, why would anybody waste their time coming down? And maybe that's the goal.
Yeah.
You know, but we're going to bring everybody we can anyway.
Well, and you know that the governor has worked on several drafts of a bill. The whole idea is, and why he thinks he has the votes now, the whole idea is they've got a bill. It's gone through the Attorney General. It's gone through amendments already. They want that bill to go, because if there are any amendments during the session, that will drag it on. They're talking now about 5 days.
Correct.
But it could go longer than that, and it could go in an entirely different direction. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. It's not a done deal. A lot of people think it's all cut and dried. We're going to go in, here's the bill, have the hearings, nobody listens, vote on it, and we're out of there. But not necessarily true, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, it's very close. And Hawaii Family Advocates, with 29 other interest groups in Honolulu, are working on a really good strategy to turn it into a no vote.
Yeah.
And people can contact me at 808-534-1514, my office number, and I can share a list of 13 House members that if we can get 4 or 5 of them out of there to vote no, we're in good shape.
Yeah. All right, let's address a bigger subject. Those of us that do not support same-sex marriage, we're called homophobes, we're called racists, we're called this, we're called everything else.
But I'm not.
But I'm not. You're not.
I don't actually know any. I think it's those people in Canada.
Well, it's true.
Baptist Church, that's about it.
And even you mentioned earlier the court case that got a lot of publicity about the woman that did not want to rent to 2 lesbians in her home.
Correct.
And we've gotten away from this over the years. I mean, the sanctity of public property, or private property, I should say. The idea of, we talk about choice, but I guess choice only means abortion. It doesn't mean economic choice. It doesn't mean constitutional choice. It only means a very narrow, limited decision. We used to take this for granted, that a person's home was his or her castle, that unless they weren't breaking the law or doing anything outrageous, it's their property.
Correct.
They should have a right to that. They've earned it. They maintain it. They do that.
And think about this. The Constitution says that the government cannot come into your house without a search warrant or probable cause that criminal activity is currently happening. Federal government cannot quarter soldiers in your home. And that's in the Constitution. There's a reason that was put in the Constitution, because those things were being done by the King of England in the colonies. It was called tyranny.
Yeah.
And that's where we're heading.
Yeah, well, we need a lot more education, and particularly constitutional education. If you think people haven't read our constitutional marriage amendment, they certainly haven't read the Constitution or not involved with it. Now we've got another issue, and that's the drones. Where do the drones fit in?
Exactly.
Because they can come into your house with that high-def camera and all that. But that's another issue. But the point is, we've gotten farther and farther away from the idea of people making choices. And it always amazes me, the liberals, or progressives, as I guess they prefer these days, they always want to pass legislation banning something or prohibiting somebody or having a cause of action with somebody else, rather than saying, hey, You don't like it, walk away from it.
Right.
As long as you've got choices, and that's where this, the idea of economic choices and other things come up. As long as you've got choices, you can do it, and you've got a lot of power. If you have a lot of people that you can convince that this business is wrong or this person is wrong in something.
It happened to Mike Gabbard back in the 90s.
It absolutely did.
And in fact, I think rather than requiring motorcycle riders to wear helmets if they don't want to, just pass a law that says if they choose not to and they get hurt, they can't sue for the head injury.
I've advocated that for decades now.
I mean, that's fair.
Have them sign a little liability form. That's right. But let people be free. If they want to smoke, they want to do this, they want to do the smoking thing irks me. I'm not a smoker. My parents were, but they argue about health, and it has nothing to do about health, and they won't get rid of it because they want that money. That's what it comes down to. So, is there money involved in the same-sex issue?
I don't believe so, because there isn't a big enough population to generate anything.
But we saw studies that came out a couple months ago saying, wow, if you do this, we're going to have all kinds of homosexual weddings here and activities and all that.
As you know, as an economist, you got to look at the assumptions, and his underlying assumptions were not as strong as they should be to support his conclusions. True. And what he doesn't talk about at all is what happens if the regular family tourist trade decreases by more than there's an increase by the gay marriage thing. So I think it's a neutral at best for the supporters of gay marriage. It's probably a financial negative.
Yeah, the interesting thing over the years, oh my gosh, we've seen studies on top of studies on top of, everybody does a study. But I can recall the studies on gambling. If you have gambling, it's going to generate all this. Didn't talk about the social issues or the offsets. Physician-assisted suicide. If we join Oregon, and we have a nice parlor down in Waikiki, I mean, we can generate, people will flock here to die in Waikiki.
It's really expensive to fly a dead body back home.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not easy, the paperwork and all that. Anyway, so economically, the thing that I've been discouraged about, every time we talk about passing a new law, first of all, we got so many laws on top of laws. I introduced a bill years ago. For every new law that you introduce, you have to get rid of 2 existing laws.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea, but it didn't go very far. But it's true. Every time somebody proposes a law, and oh my gosh, all us legislators, we get calls every day, usually from somebody's neighbor. Can you pass a law to take care of Jim Hochberg because, all that stuff. And then we try, patiently explain to them, well, no, you can't, number one. Number two, there's a law about this. But we don't enforce the laws. And oftentimes, when laws are proposed, the police will come down here and say, we can't enforce that. We don't have enough people now to do the things.
Right.
But we go ahead and do it anyway to give a false sense of security to people. But in this same-sex marriage, there's a couple areas that we really
There are 3 really bad pieces to the September 9th version.
Okay, go ahead, you do it, and we'll see if we're in sync.
First of all, I have no idea why this was necessary, but currently you have to be 17 or have your parents' consent to marry or a judge's certificate because you're an emancipated minor. They're trying to say you can be 15 or 16 without parental consent. I don't know why that's part of same-sex marriage unless they want to marry younger people than can get married when the parents wouldn't consent.
All right,
that's very concerning to me.
All right.
Secondly, if you get married in Hawaii, and any kind of marriage, either the regular one or the new one, and you move to a state that doesn't recognize your marriage, well, we know which one that is, that's the new one, then the jurisdictional requirements to get divorced, which in Hawaii are you have to live here for 6 months before you can file a divorce action, that doesn't apply to you if you're a same-sex couple. You can just file your stuff through the mail from Arizona or wherever Michael Beatty's having a hard time getting divorced. And I don't know why it has to be only for, if they want to say you don't have to be here jurisdictionally, it should just be across the board. But it's always special rights for the sodomites, special rights for sodomites.
That'd be a good bumper sticker.
Anyway, and the one that really bothers me, because I'm real into religious liberty, is this so-called religious exemption. Now, they took it out of the Civil Unions Bill. I didn't like it when they were doing it there, but the deal got made early on in the session as to what the exemption was going to say, and my good buddy Senator, he wasn't budging. But what it requires, it completely exempts the solemnizer with the license to say no for no reason at all. So the pastor, the judge can just say, I'm not doing a civil union. Well, now they want to apply that to same-sex marriage, which is not a problem. but they didn't exempt the use of the facility. So if a same-sex couple brought their own solemnizer to your synagogue, temple, mosque, church,
Polynesian Cultural Center.
and said, we want to use your sanctuary and your banquet hall for our same-sex or civil union, there was no protection.
Yeah.
And so we were able to get the strangest exemption I've ever seen in my life. In order to qualify, a religious organization has to use the premises they want to exempt for religious purposes. That's probably always going to be the case.
Yeah.
Secondly, when they solemnize marriages in their church, they can only use that power to solemnize marriages for members, which isn't defined.
Right.
And some churches, big churches, have no members. They don't believe in membership.
Right.
So
Jim,
they're completely uncovered.
You've talked so much here.
We're out of time?
We're out of time. Give people your phone number again for Hawaii Family Advocates.
534-1514.
All right. Jim Hochberg.
And it's Jim at hawaiifamilyadvocates.org.
Okay, that's good. The main thing is, the main message, we go into session October 28th. There is still plenty of time for you to let your legislator know how you feel, to get people to know how you feel. Well, on either side of the issue. You want to support the issue? Fine. But the point is, there has not been transparency. We have a long way to go. Jim Hochberg, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's nice to see you.
We'll talk again.
And you're my senator, so I always like
I
talking.
appreciate that. So look, we can talk about this issue, which I consider to be very divisive and all that, or other issues. Main thing is we support Hawaii and our future. We will have a better day. Aloha, and thank you for joining us.